to the Low Post Podcast. It's Friday. The in-season tournament is down to the championship game. We are all living in Tyrese Halliburton's world and on Tyrese Halliburton's time. The Indiana Pacers upset the Milwaukee Bucks, if it's even an upset. I don't even know what's happening with the Pacers anymore. And they will play the Los Angeles Lakers, who blew the doors off the New Orleans Pelicans in what is really a perfect in-season tournament final in lots of ways. Mo Dakhil, how are you?
I'm doing well, Zach. I'm fired up. You're right. It is Tyrese Halliburton's world. We're all just paying rent.
You know why it's perfect? Because it's like small market, huge market, to the point that they intersected 5 or 6 years ago when the Lakers got dinged for tampering on Paul George. Remember the right. Magic Johnson, yes. Jimmy Kimmel, the wink, if I do this, if I do that, you know what I mean? And they played 2 games last year. Look, it's last year's already ancient history, but do you remember those games, Mo?
Yeah, no, I mean, they had the big game. They had the Nembhard hit the game winner in LA. And
they were both decided by 1 point on buzzer shots. Nembhard hit a 3 on a sensational kind of half lefty cross-court pass from Halliburton, who's just every game now there's 2 passes where you're like, I don't even understand what happened. Last night, he had the pick and roll with Turner going to his right, where he got to the Steve Nash spot under the rim and threw this cross-court bullet to somebody in the corner. I'm forgetting who. And it normally those passes kind of wrap along the baseline, right, out of reach of the defenders and get the guy in the corner. This one went right over and through Giannis's hands above his head and hit the shooter right in stride. Parker saying it was Obi Toppin. Just an absolutely ridiculous pass that I watched like 4 times. So there was that. And then in Indiana, Anthony Davis blocked Tyrese Halliburton with like 12 seconds left, and then Buddy Hield missed a buzzer shot. Both games were decided by 1 point last year. Just a great matchup. So, look, here's where we stand. Pacers are now 12-8, first in offense, 28th in defense, 7th in net rating. Mo, we're reaching the point now where the Pacers are not a carnival that is just like, oh, it's a fun story, totally unviable for the playoffs. No, this team, when you're 7th in net rating, you're reaching the point where I don't really even care what your splits are in terms of offense, defense. Like, you can win a playoff round if you're this good. Net
you're
rating
a team.
Wise.
Yeah, you have something. You got something going where you're able to kind of, when you're up that high in net rating, means you're building a cushion somehow.
Well, and you know what I was thinking about last night is, so they held the Celtics to a very kind of minuscule points per possession figure. It was their 3rd best defensive game of the season, but the first 2 were against the Spurs and the Wizards, so toss them out. Milwaukee was their 7th or 8th lowest points allowed per possession figure. It was a below league average output for Milwaukee. And unlike Boston, Milwaukee actually shot threes pretty well in that game. So there was not a lot of shooting luck you could point to. And I said this after they beat the Celtics. The Pacers are playing these games at an intensity level that suggests, even internally, they were aware, like, yeah, it's cool we put up 157 against the Hawks and like we're the number 1 offense and it's fun, but like we're kind of aware that we've got to reach a level of competency on defense and intensity and togetherness and on a string rotations and all of that to really be viable. And in these 2 games, with everyone in the world watching, they have hit that mark. Not perfect, not great. They don't have the personnel to be great, but good enough that their offense can get them past elite opponents. This version of the team is a dangerous team. And the team I was thinking about is a random connection to make, but this is the first in-season tournament. I thought a little bit about the Suns in the bubble, who kind of came in as like this fun team. Like nobody really cared that much about them. They're like, you know what? We're going to use this thing to get serious and catapult ourselves to a new level. And of course, they make the finals the next year. They get Chris Paul, etc. The way the Pacers have approached the in-season tournament kind of reminds me of that in terms of like, you know, some teams maybe care, some teams don't care that much. Like, we're using this as an opportunity to dial into a gear that we're going to need later and see how it looks and feels. And it looks and feels good enough. They're in the finals of the in-season tournament, and like, they're already a team. When the best teams see them on the schedule, it's like, oh man, this is going to be tough. All right. So, and then the Lakers, of course, 22nd in offense, up to 6th in defense. So that defense is really rounded into form. They're getting healthy. Vando's back. Rui's back. Just as we look ahead to the championship game, give me something you're looking for in terms of let's preview this like a playoff series and a playoff game. Like, what's a matchup related thing on either end of the floor that you're going to start off like, I want to see this in the first 2 possessions of the game?
I mean, it's probably not going to be the first 2 possessions of the game because the guy doesn't start, but I want to see Nesmith guard LeBron. I know you talked about it last podcast. You're on an island, you're scrounging for berries on Nesmith Island. I'm telling you, Zach, it's getting a little more crowded. More
Look,
people are coming.
I ran into, and his agent can verify this, Miami Boston conference finals 2022, maybe. I don't remember what year it was. It was a Miami Boston playoff series years ago. I ran into Aaron Nesmith and his agent after one of the games, and he wasn't playing. And I said to him, man, like, I think you're good, and I think you should play. And he looked at me and he was like, really? I really appreciate that. I'm like, I'm serious, man. I'm on Aaron Nesmith Island. No one's with me except me, you, and your agent. And anyway.
Well, but I think that's an important matchup for them. Like, when you go to that Bucks game, you know, last night, you know, he had possessions where he was guarding LeBron. He had a play, you know, he took a charge on Lopez. He drew a turnover off of Middleton. Like, he's kind of all over the place. Like, he is their guy defensively that needs to be able to hold up. And the way LeBron's playing, and LeBron's going all out for this tournament, I think there's an important matchup there to watch for. And that's something where I don't think they can keep him on the bench for long in this game, because you can't let LeBron get going early and quickly. And I think they need to make sure that they get him on there. And that's the matchup I really am most intrigued about going into the finals right now.
Yeah, when I think about when the Lakers have the ball, your first question is, oh, is Obi Toppin guarding LeBron? And Obi Toppin's been like pretty good defensively by his standards, but this is a totally different assignment. And and Nesmith is the guy with the physicality and the quickness. I mean, physicality. LeBron can just bowl over anybody. What he's doing. I have Fred Katz on after you to talk about the MVP race. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the numbers he's putting up. This is the best shooting season of his career from 2 and 3.
Absurd.
Almost 39. When I turned 39, if I had like 2 beers the next morning, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I could walk our daughter to school. So it's a little
rough.
A little rough here. He's shooting like 63% on 2s or something crazy. So that was the first thing I thought about. And how do you guard the LeBron AD pick and roll? Historically, they have, in some matchups, I was actually watching some film of this earlier today because why not? In a couple of prior games, they've switched now and then and put Miles Turner on LeBron on switches and lived with who's ever guarding LeBron, guarding Anthony Davis on the other end. You could maybe do that to kind of stay out of rotation and take the lobs to AD out. But I'm with you. That was the first thing I thought about was, will we see more Nesmith? Will we see Nesmith and Toppin even together, if it makes sense? How quickly will we see Nesmith? What else are you looking for? Lakers offense, which is really, when you talk about the Lakers' viability as a real contender, a team that can win 2, 3, 4 playoff series, which is what they aspire to be, their defense is going to be awesome. It is what it is. It's a known commodity. They are a very good defensive team with an all-world defensive player. It comes down to, can they score enough points on offense? And so this is a good place to start. What else are you looking for out of their offense in this game?
I mean, are they going to make enough threes? I mean, this is wild. Like, what they're shooting in the in-season tournament has been absurd. I think they're above 40%. I mean, Taurean Prince was on fire last night. But like in regular season games or non-in-season tournament games, I should say, they're not shooting it as well. It's not as solid in that stuff. And I think that's an important aspect of like, can they knock down enough shots? I think an important thing in that game against New Orleans was right off the bat, D'Angelo Russell came in and hit some shots and made some plays for them. And I think that kind of got them into their flow of things and got everybody kind of like, okay, we're going to get a good D'Lo game. We're going to get some shots. We're going to get some shot making. But that's going to be just such an important thing, because if they're not making threes, then it's easier to pack the paint. Let's just completely crowd the paint and just, hey, beat us from the outside. With LeBron shooting insane numbers, as you were talking about, shooting his, I think it's his best percentage from three, at least the last I checked, since 2014. And I think that's a challenge in that regard. Like, you got to just kind of, what are you going to live with when you're guarding LeBron? And then how can you kind of shrink the paint and keep him out of the paint? And you just got to pack it and hope those guys aren't hitting shots. But again, in this in-season tournament, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the courts and that weird strip down the middle or whatnot. Maybe that's what it is. But those guys see that and they start knocking down threes. Like, they're shooting at a really kind of a ridiculous percentage during the in-season tournament. And it's so weird when you look at it in the non-tournament games.
Yeah, they're 20. I think they're up now after last night's outburst. I think they're like 26th in 3-point percentage. They were 29th going into last night's game. Still looking for the lasers. LeBron is still looking for the lasers on his team. But it is interesting in this one matchup that the Pacers are a team that has made a collective decision. Okay, we're not a good defensive team. We don't have the personnel. We're just not going to be good. One thing we're going to do is we're not giving up threes. They give up the fewest threes in the entire league. And part of that, that's good. That sounds good. The flip side of that is they give up by far the most shots at the rim. Like, it's not even close. And it's a trade-off that they're very clearly making on purpose, which is like, hey, we're just not going to send a lot of help. And the consequences are like, we're going to give up a lot of shots at the rim and shots in the restricted area. And we're going to not be, it's not going to be a strong suit of ours, but we're going to take a lot of threes. You're not. And we hope the math is going to win out for us in the end, even if you shoot like 80% on layups on a ton of them. They're playing a team in the Lakers that does not shoot threes and wants to get to the rim at all times and is best when they're at the rim. And you wonder, again, approaching this game like a playoff game, will the Pacers tweak their defense, which you never see teams really do to a sort of wholesale degree in the regular season? Will they tweak their scheme to be like, actually, we're going to do the opposite of what we usually do and dare you to hit threes against us? And maybe you're right, Mo. Maybe it's just in-season tournament, the Lakers become the 2018 Warriors and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think they kind of have to, if you're going to have a chance to win this game, you know, because like you said, it's their style of defense plays right into the hands of the Lakers. And then on top of that, they also are one of the most foul prone teams in the NBA. And I think those are issues. Now you're going to put those guys on the lines. You're going to get guys in foul trouble early. You know, I don't know, besides Nesmith, how many other guys I feel confident saying, all right, let's see what they look like against LeBron defensively for an entire game. And if he gets into foul trouble, it's a problem. So allowing a lot of drives into the rim is going to put you in a situation, you know, size wise, they're going to be hurting if Miles Turner gets into foul trouble and trying to block a couple of shots at the rim and whatnot. Like, that's going to be the challenge for them in that sense. So I think they kind of have to. And I think you have that day in between. I think Carlisle can kind of sit there and look, you know, and say, hey, this game, we need to do a good job of just kind of closing out, but not running guys off the line. And I think that's the thing. There's a big difference with, hey, we're going to pack the paint. Doesn't mean we're going to give away wide open threes. We're still going to close out, but we're just not going to go there to the point that I want to run guys off the line. And there's nobody on the Lakers where it's like a JJ Redick that you're so worried about, the lasers you were talking about that LeBron's looking for, that you feel like you absolutely have to make sure you close out on them. These guys, let's just see if they can make a couple.
You mentioned the biggest structural advantage that the Lakers have in this matchup, which is they are fourth in free throw rate after being first last year, and the Pacers are 28th in opponent free throw rate, i.e. they foul and send teams to the line a lot. They do not get to the line much themselves, and the Lakers are first in opponent free throw rate. So the Lakers do not foul. They do not send you to the line. So now, on one hand, it's like, well, Indiana doesn't rely on free throws for its offense, so that's kind of a good thing for them that, like, the Lakers, if they don't get a lot of free throws, that doesn't really affect them. But you are going into this game where, like, the stats say if you played this game 100 times, in 75 of them, the Lakers are getting +8 in free throws or something. They're built in an advantage at the free throw line. Maybe, Mo, I mean, the way this is going, like, do the Lakers even need to have the ball anymore to call timeouts? Like, can they call a timeout when the Pacers have the ball in the final? Like, can Tyrese Halliburton be dribbling and like Darvin Ham calls a timeout and the ref's like, no, timeout. Lakers get it.
There was a play in the first quarter where the Pelicans got a timeout, and I think the guy was like almost out of bounds, and the Lakers were complaining, and I think Doc Rivers and Candace Parker were on the call, and they're like, of all the teams, the Lakers should never complain about when a timeout's called, because the rules just apply a little bit differently to the Lakers in that regard. But yeah, it's gonna be just interesting watching the structure of these things, because as much as we've been focused on like the Lakers offense too, like Lakers got to figure out how they're going to defend Tyrese Halliburton. And I don't know if anybody has an answer for that yet.
No, nobody does, Mo. They're first in offense by so much. It's ridiculous. I just let's pause and talk about the Lakers for a second, because they're 14-9. And yet before last night's game, they had a negative point differential for the season. Now they're plus 20 something. They're +1 a game. So their record has outpaced their sort of team quality, at least by that measure. I mentioned their offense, they're 22nd in offense. And I've said already on this podcast, I don't think personally the Russell, Prince, Reddish trio as starters is dynamic enough for them to get where they want to go. Particularly since one of the crutches that they could just sort of use to bolster their offense on just so nights 3 or 4 years ago, Anthony Davis's jump shot is just it's MIA. It's been MIA for years. It's not coming back. But I think the Reeves, LeBron, AD trio is dynamic, and I like Hachimura as a fourth guy there. And there's just, look, I had them in my second tier of title contenders before the season. Tier 1 was Milwaukee, Boston, Denver, Phoenix. I would still have the Lakers right there, despite everything I just said about their offense, because I think they can get to lineups that are better offensively, even if they don't make a trade. And there hasn't been a trade that I've loved yet that people have talked about for them that is also realistic. There's just a toughness and a physicality and a seriousness to this team that I really, really like. And so I buy their record as indicative of who they are. I completely buy their defense. And I buy that in the playoffs, they can slow the game down, and LeBron is still the ultimate chess master, right, that they can score enough to be a real threat to make another deep playoff run. I just feel like last year they got as far as they could get with a mediocre offense. Like, it's only going to get you so far, and it got them far. There are 4 teams left in the NBA, and the Lakers were one. That's an amazing accomplishment. It's hard for me to see them getting, I could see them getting there again, exactly as is right now. That's how much respect I have for them as a team. It's hard for me to see them getting further unless their offense can go up a tick. They don't have to be elite, but can you get to like a 12th best offense in the league? Can you get to a place where there's something else in your half court that I feel comfortable in? Maybe that's just more Reeves, more LeBron, more Davis together, and a good season from Hachimura, who just got back. But you're the expert. You were in the league as a video coordinator and a coach. Like, what do you see with this offense, and what's there for them that may internally boost them to where they need to be? Or do you disagree with me? Do you think, like, as is, they're good enough to get to the finals?
I mean, no, I don't disagree with you. The offense is the problem for them to get to the finals. Their defense is good enough to take them to the finals. Their offense has to get better. And just to kind of think about it this way, when they won the championship in the bubble in 2019 or 2020, it was their offensive rating was 11th in the NBA. So it was just right where you were saying. You said about 12th, right? Like, is where it has to go. So that's the goal for them. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be top 5. It doesn't have to be even top 10, but it just needs to be league average, I would say. And I think their defense will carry them the rest of the way. And at the end of the day, LeBron's genius will take them the whole way. I want to see more of the Reeves LeBron AD combo. Like, I know they're probably pacing it and seeing how it goes. They know what they have. They need to find another piece. I just don't know if that guy's on the roster. And that's the thing that worries me about them. Like, it's the defense is there. I think Ruri's great, but like, look, man, that game he had in Memphis in the playoffs in game 1 where he went completely nuts. Like, I don't know how realistic we're there with that, right? And how often we're going to see a flash like that. Hard to bank on that. You're in a situation where, it's Max Christie's been good for them and has been getting minutes, but I don't know again if he's ready to kind of be that guy. Like, the internal stuff, I'm not sure if there's anybody I look at on their roster that could really boost them. Because you're right, that starting lineup with D'Angelo Russell, Cam Reddish, just doesn't really kind of move you offensively. And I think that's the concerns for them. And that's why I think everybody's trying to make the trade. But I also think this is a year where there might not be somebody on the trade market for them. Like, there's
and look, like, LaVine has been the name everyone wants to bring up because he's clearly going to be available and he's represented by Clutch, and he's a good offensive player to a very good offensive player who, as I've said ad nauseum, you put him on a team where he's the third option. He's a finisher, not a starter, not in terms of lineup, in terms of how he deals with possessions. And he's got good defensive architecture around him. That's the fit. I just, it's a big, big number. And I do think the Lakers have the assets to get him because I don't think DeMarcus going to be that great. But I don't know that that's the one, because it kneecaps your defense a little bit. And I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze with that one in terms of the offense.
And you have to be concerned about the injury risk, and the fact that he's not right now is a concern. And what are you going to get from him, through the stretch of the entire season, when he does come back? I think there's a genuine concern with that. Like, the guys I would kind of try to look at for them is more just somebody that can shoot the ball and spread the floor for them, because then that opens everything up. Then LeBron doesn't have to work so hard to get into the paint and really kind of be a challenge. It's that laser guy he's looking for. It's a Luke Kennard if he's willing to shoot on a regularly or something. It'd be nice if it's a guy that can put it on the floor and on the bounce it a couple of times and get to the rim a little bit more as well. But I just don't know if those guys are out there right now. And I think that's kind of the challenge for the Lakers in this trade market. Is it's either swing for the fences for a guy like LaVine and take the risks with what comes with your defense with that and his injury health, or there's nothing. It doesn't feel like there's a guy out there right now that, like, I look at going like, that's who the Lakers have to target.
I just like their toughness and just the fact that they can put 5 good defenders on the floor all the time. And I'd be hesitant to chip away at that. I said last week, like, start games, finish games, whatever. They're just going to need to play Reeves a ton when it matters because he's just too dynamic compared to the other options. And the LeBron Reeves 2-man game, both ways, with Reeves a screener or a ball handler, is a big weapon for them. I guess, like, I like Hachimura. I buy what he did in the playoffs. I don't think he'll shoot 49% from threes, but if he can make enough threes, I like that foursome. Can I finagle a 5th guy that I can count on night to night? Maybe. I like this team. Yeah, offensively, they got to be a little better. I like them. Let's talk about the team they're playing, the Pacers.
Just one more note with the Lakers is the important thing too when they make the trade, and you said it earlier. What's special about this team is their defense, and you can't take away from that. Don't make a trade to sacrifice that to try to get just better offensively, because if you lose that and then you're not that much better offensively, like, you can't get to the league average offensive rating but then drop out of the top 10 in defensive rating because of the trade you made, right? Don't make that trade-off. I think if that's the case, just stay with what you got and see if it's good enough to kind of get you to the conference finals again.
Well, if that's internally what they think, something like Hachimura plus Russell plus the last draft pick we have left to trade for Zach LaVine, plus maybe something else to round out the salaries. if that's what they think the end game of that trade is, exactly what you talked about, like our offense gets better, our defense gets worse, it washes out, it's a wash in the end. That's definitely not worth $160 million of Zach LaVine in the next 4 years. They will play the Pacers in the finals of the in-season tournament. Pacers dispatched the Bucks last night. Pacers are first in offense by a lot. And I'm going to repeat, the Tyrese Halliburton pick and roll stats are just unbelievable. He is the best pick and roll ball handler in the league. Full stop. The Halliburton Miles Turner pick and roll combination is the best pick and roll combination in the league. And I'm not just making that up. The second spectrum numbers are what they are. I looked at 117 players who have run at least 100 pick and rolls so far. The Pacers are scoring 1.28 points per possession directly out of Halliburton pick and rolls when he shoots, or the guy he passes to shoots. That's number 2 among those 117 players. Number 1 is Craig Porter Jr. of the Cavaliers, who barely meets the 100 pick and roll threshold, but has been a little bit of a jitterbuggy problem when he plays. And zoom out for the entire possession, 1.31 points per possession on any trip featuring a Tyrese Halliburton pick and roll. Number 1 among 117 guys who have run at least 100 pick and rolls. The guy is incredible. He's an MVP candidate. He's a first-team All-NBA candidate. You can frame that trade as a win-win trade if you like. The Pacers won it. And they want this game. So you're the Lakers. In the past matchups, you've had Patrick Beverley and Dennis Schroeder to put on Tyrese Halliburton. How are you? What are you doing with this guy, Mo? Because I don't really love the idea of D'Angelo Russell on him, but I don't love. Are you trying Cam Reddish? Or are you like, what are we doing here?
I think to start, you got to put Taurean Prince on him if you're going to stay with that starting lineup. I think that's really your best chance right there. And when he goes into pick and rolls against AD, because that's who's going to be guarding Turner, you're probably going to be a switch situation, and you got to see if AD can hold up in there. And I think AD has been phenomenal defensively, and I think that's going to be the fun challenge. We're talking about the Lakers and how the Pacers were going to guard LeBron. This is the challenge for the Lakers to figure out right now. This is the puzzle piece. It's do you bring Vanderbilt in early to put him on?
That's a good call.
You're going to have Reeves chase him early and things like that, and you got to probably try to funnel him right into AD, and hopefully AD will have a better chance at him on the rim than Brook Lopez did. I mean, how many layups did he have that were just beautifully placed over Brook's hands, and a beautiful touch off the rim, off the backboard, and right into the bucket? Like, it was so many of those over and over again last night. Got to hope that AD will be able to kind of slow him up a bit and force him to either take those layups a little further out, kind of disrupt the timing a bit, or and with the guard chasing on top of it, because I think that might be the difference with the Bucks. I think when it's Beasley was trying his best to kind of chase over the top. It was difficult. I think the Lakers got to make sure they do a good job of funneling him into AD and try to disrupt that timing. But also, the problem out of that is when all that happens, he's still going to make the pass. The pass you were talking about to Obi Toppin, which was just perfectly played. I thought he had nowhere to go. I thought he was bottled up. And then he finds Toppin, for a wide open 3 off of that. Like, that's the problem, because it sucks in your defense. And I think that's the whole game for the Lakers right there defensively.
The other thing about him is, and there were a couple passes last night where this was thrown into stark relief. He's such a good traditional bounce pass pocket passer and such an incredible lob passer that defenses don't know which of them is coming when he turns the corner and he slows it down like that. And there were a couple of times in the game last night where the Bucks guessed wrong. They thought lob and it was bounce. They thought bounce and it was lob. By the way, this might be the craziest stat of the whole season. What do you think Tyrese Halliburton is shooting on floaters? And to be clear, floaters are shots in terms of shot charting anyway. Shots twos between the restricted area and the foul line. That little tricky in between range where field goal percentages tend to be about as low as they are, even lower than 3-point percentages for a lot of players. And Tyrese Haliburton takes a lot of them. It's not like he's taken few, so it's boosting his percentage. You're not allowed to look it up. What do you think he is shooting on floaters?
If I had to guess, just because you're astonished by it, it's got to be somewhere around like 62, 63%.
Wow. 64%. That honestly, you win. Actually, by Price is Right. This is a debate we have in our house, Mo. My wife and I have this debate. It's a very intense debate. When you're guessing something, the amount of something, the time of day, whatever it is, do Price is Right rules apply or not? Like if you go over, do you automatically lose?
No, I think it's closest number. And that's only because I'm just trying to win debate. Listen, Zach.
Oh, you won either way. You didn't go over. You guessed perfectly by Price is Right rules and non-Price is Right rules.
I'm going for future things. Listen, I'm newly engaged. I'm trying to figure out all these important discussions. We're gonna have to. Me and my fiance will discuss how we'll go with that. I'll discuss it with her about Price is Right rules, and I'll get back to you on that one. But for me, I think it's just closest number.
I've assumed The Price is Right is still on television, hosted by Drew Carey.
I believe so.
First of all, I am team apply Price is Right rules to everything, only because I always enjoyed the strategy of the contestant who would guess $1, who would bid $1, and when they felt that was the right thing to do. That honestly,
I always hated the one who went like $1 over the next person.
Yeah, that person is. Look, it's smart, and look, if you got one shot, you got six games to play, 6 things to bid on, and you're never going to be on Price is Right again. This is it. You got to be ruthless. If that's in play, and you're the last person bidding, and you want to spin that big wheel and be in the showcase showdown,
you got to do it.
That's one game show I would go on. I would go on Price is Right. Because if you suck on Price is Right, it's not embarrassing.
Yeah.
If you go on Jeopardy and you suck, it's embarrassing. If you go on Wheel of Fortune and you become that person, that's your whole life. That's it. Like you could be, we've all seen the Wheel of Fortune bloopers. You could go on like a great first date with somebody and then they Google you and that comes up. That's it. You're done forever. This is the person who can't get this one with all the letters. I don't know what the hell we're talking about. 64%.
Is
that might be the craziest stat of the whole season. Of all the Haliburton stats, that one is like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's been his, secret weapon, I think, in terms of being able to kind of get to the rim, because now everybody's going to push up on that, and that's going to allow him to kind of get there. And the touch he has on these things are perfect. The arc to it, like there's a special art to the floater, and I think that's one of those things. When I was in San Antonio, that was something Tony Parker perfected. And that was his shot, and that was something. Again, also it makes it easier for you to attack the bigs from there, and it drop and whatever the bigs are in drop. Okay, I'm not going to meet him at the rim. I'm gonna make him come out a little bit. I'm gonna hit these floaters till he does, and I think that's kind of the perfect touch to it. I mean, it's the evolution of Haliburton's game over the last 3 years, and especially since he became the man in Indiana and had the ball in his hands all the time, has been. I don't know if I was expecting it this much. I was big on Haliburton. I never expected him to be this guy, and I'm kind of blown away by him.
So the incredible thing is he hasn't changed the way he plays that much. Like I think even he's talked about this. The fact that he's got to look for his shot more. When I spoke to him before last season, and he talked about the challenge that he was being pushed by his trainer, pushing himself. Like, this is his terminology. Like, I got to be more of an asshole. Like, I got to be more. My instinct is hit ahead, kick it. This is why people like to play with me. It's the way I like to play. And he has engaged that part of his game. He's averaging 27 a game. I looked it up today. Second Spectrum has this way you can sort the percentage of times the guy running the pick and roll takes a shot out of the pick and roll. So I call that the Dillon Brooks category, because Dillon Brooks and Cam Thomas, it's like they're always number 1 or number 2 in the league. Kelly Oubre Jr. is like 80% of pick and rolls they're shooting. That's what they're doing the pick and roll to do. That's what they want to do. On the other end, you had like the Ricky Rubio types who are like 12% of the time they're shooting. They don't want to shoot. They want to pass. Tyrese Halliburton, here are his numbers the last 4 years. Percentage of times he shoots out of the pick and roll, starting with the 2021 season. 39%. Next year, 32.7%. Last season, up to 36%, still not as high as it was. This year, you think, oh, it's got to be up to 45, 50, 60%. 39%. He's still playing the way he plays. He's just getting more chances to do it. And I agree with you. Like D'Angelo Russell, you got to guard Buddy Hield, somebody else. I don't know who guards Tyrese Halliburton, but what a chance for AD to stamp his Defensive Player of the Year candidacy, because he's going to have to do a little bit of everything in this game. If you watch the old games between these teams, he'll throw in a random blitz on Halliburton now and then. He'll like late clock, he might switch onto Halliburton, and that's a big challenge. I'm fascinated by how they negotiate this, who guards him. You know, LeBron will switch onto him now and then. We saw LeBron take 3 charges last night. At least 2 were from Zion, which I don't know how much money you'd have to offer me to take a charge from Zion Williamson, but it ain't free. But, you know, I think that's where I start in terms of just, I'm fascinated by how they handle the Tyrese Halliburton scoring machine.
And I think you're onto it in terms of the switching of the pick and roll coverages. I think that's the part of the strategy for the Lakers. They need to kind of keep him guessing all game. And that's incredibly hard as a defense to be on the same page over and over again. Like the number of defenses I see that are in the same coverage almost all game, and then somebody still blows the same coverage is astonishing. So now you're asking these guys to switch over, like, hey, the next 3 pick and rolls, I want you to just show and recover. The next one, I want you to blitz for 2. Then I want you to switch on. Like, you got to try to keep him guessing. And I think that's a hard thing for a defense to do, right? And ideally, you'd like to be able to just stay in one coverage. But the longer you stay in a coverage, the more opportunities he has to pick you apart, to figure it out and then pick you apart and go from there. And I think that's going to be a big thing for the Lakers. And you're right. This is a big moment for AD early in the season to kind of stamp himself as, you know, hey, I need to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year.
The last thing on this game, and we saw it last night. Really, we saw it last night. Lakers, okay transition defense team. Over the last 3 or 4 years, they've been kind of an older, sometimes slower team. It's been a problem area for them. Can't be a problem area against the Pacers. Nope. If it's a problem area against the Pacers, they'll run your ass out of the building. And boy, was it a problem for the Bucks last night. They have been the worst transition defense team in the league from day one, and it just isn't getting any better. Now, last night, the Pacers kind of complicated it for them because they took Obi Toppin off Giannis. Obi Toppin couldn't guard Giannis, and they actually put Buddy Hield on him for stretches of the game. And all that did was serve to confuse the matchups for Milwaukee when they were going offense to defense. Like, I got to find my guy, and all of a sudden the possession is over. They've scored. Part of it is also just, I don't know what's going on with this team, but there was that play where I don't know who threw the diagonal pass to Nebhart late in the game when he got a layup out of it. He just flat outran Damian Lillard. Like, Damian Lillard was ahead of him, and he was like, if I sprint, I'll just get a layup. Milwaukee has got to get serious about look, their point of attack defense stinks. That was built into the team. Malik Beasley could not be the solution to Tyrese Halliburton and every other ball handler you see, Tyrese Maxey, whoever, you know, Boston has as handling the ball or who they assign him to. That's baked into their team. They're going to have to figure out a way around that. They're missing Crowder and Connaughton, not that they're solutions to it, but they're depth pieces. They gotta figure why are we so bad in transition? Like, they got to get serious about this because, you know, look, they're good. They're 15-7. Their offense is third in the league. The Bucks are going to be there in deep into the playoffs, but their lack of seriousness as a transition defense team has been alarming to me. And the whole world got to see it last night. The whole world got to see what's been going on all season last night.
It's not even just the transition. It's given up layups off of made baskets. There were 3 different times last night where the first half, Damian Lillard gets a tough layup. The Pacers immediately fly up the court, kick ahead from Halliburton to Obi Toppin, and he gets a reverse layup. Uh, Later in the game, Malik Beasley makes a layup, and he's doing a little bit of flexing right after the layup. And Isaiah Jackson just sprints right by him and Bobby Portis right down the middle of the lane, and he gets an easy layup in transition. Then there was the Obi Toppin lob from half court.
Oh, incredible. They just didn't pick him up. He just ran by everybody.
He just completely blew by him. It was on the wing. He was in the corner. He ran by at least 2 Bucks and just flew right by them. Nobody ever stops them. Halliburton sees it and throws the lob from half court. Like, these are problems in this game. My colleague Seth Partnow called it out in the Knicks game, said it happened a bunch of times when they played the Knicks. It just didn't matter because they shot the 3 ball unbelievably well. But like, that's a problem. And that's a concern. And that's something the Lakers have to make sure they do a good job of slowing that down. It's, you really can't have a chance to take a break, even if you make a basket and try to sit there.
It's a little bit of everything with Milwaukee. Like, sometimes it's their floor balance. So Dame, Giannis pick and roll. Giannis rolls. Brook Lopez is in one corner. Someone else is in the other corner. 4 guys end up below the foul line. You're in a bad position. Sometimes it's the matchup confusion we talked about, which is correctable. And like, sometimes you just got to guard who you're near. Like, and sometimes it's just effort. And it's like, do you guys care? Like, what's going on here? Okay, let's make picks real quickly. I'm putting you on the spot. Who wins the in-season tournament?
I got to go with the Lakers. LeBron just seems so hell-bent on this. I mean, when was the last time you saw LeBron James take 3 charges in a game, let alone in a half? Like, he just seems so locked in with how he was going. I mean, that was an amazing 11-3 run on his own with the threes. I mean, those were 2 massively deep threes he took. And then, just the constant cutting and movement that he's kind of doing. Like, he seems incredibly locked in and has the motivation to win this tournament.
I really want to pick the Pacers.
I know you do.
I just can see LeBron sucking the air out of the game, walking it up, and being like, all right, where's Tyrese Halliburton? Come screen for me, Austin Reeves. Okay, where's Buddy Hield? Come screen for me. Come screen for me, Austin Reeves, whoever, D'Angelo Russell. And just turning this into a LeBron classic. You know what? The Pacers are going to win, Mo. The Pacers. This is Tyrese Halliburton's time, and they don't care about you squeezing the pace. Pacers win the in-season tournament. 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes on a team that's near and dear to your heart, your former employer. In-season tournament's been getting all the attention. James Harden trade was like a month ago. Whatever it was. People kind of, they were 0-5, embarrassing themselves. Very quietly outside the attention of the national media, the Clippers are 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're now 500. They beat the Denver Nuggets at full strength, which is their, white whale in the NBA and has been for 3 years. They are 13th in offense, 6th in defense, which has been the story really of their team and their resurgences. Zubats has never defended this well. Kawhi looks more like peak Kawhi on defense, not quite there on offense, although he's trending the right way. This is a strong defensive team. A little bit more flow to their offense. We can talk about that if you want. Their starting 5 is plus 42 in 167 minutes, even though the Nuggets actually blitzed that lineup the other night. And they're dabbling in this Powell as the 5th guy around Kawhi, PG, Harden, and Zoo. Russ is not shooting well off the bench, but he's bringing the right kind of energy. In that game against the Nuggets, it's the first time Russ and Harden played 0 minutes together in a game. And my least favorite grouping of all before that had been Russ plus Harden plus Kawhi without Paul George. I was like, I'd never want to see that ever again.
That's a rough one.
What are you seeing from the Clippers? Is there reason to take this team like a little more seriously all of a sudden?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that Ty Lue has kind of figured out. I think the most starting one is he actually hasn't played PJ Tucker at all the last 4 games. Daniel Tice has come in, and when they picked up Tice, like, my friends are going to go nuts because in the group chat, I just like, whatever, it's fine. Like, it's okay. It's not going to move the needle. He's been great for them. And that's helped them to kind of stay big. You know, it goes from Zubac to Tice and then back to Zoo. And I think that's been huge for them, you know, with how they have everything sort of rolling. I think in the past few games now, you're beginning to see a more comfort level in the pick and roll between Harden and Zubac, because early on that looked terrible. There's no rhythm, no chemistry whatsoever. I think Zoo is now beginning to kind of figure out how to roll with Harden, because it's not always just a straight roll to the rim. It's almost like a delayed or kind of a slow sort of just slide along with
him. You gotta dance with him. You gotta dance with him.
Exactly. You know, and I think Zoo's kind of learning how to dance now. And I think that's something that we're seeing with their offense and flow. And then you just can't ignore what Powell does for them. I mean, it's more important than anything else. He's just constantly cutting. You know, there was a play in that Denver game, I forget which quarter, but you know, Harden has an ISO, you know, at the elbow, and then Powell just cuts, and Harden sees him, gives him a quick bucket, and it's simple like that. It's small, simple things like that, and they're not standing around as much. They're not trying to. I think the phase of trying to figure each other out is sort of over, and now just trying to build on stuff. And I think that's really what we're seeing with them. And I think it's beginning to get smoother and smoother. And it does help that the in-season tournament's kind of taking the lights off of them a bit.
And maybe this is what Kawhi actually needs, because a lot of the skepticism about the trade was, well, there's just not enough basketball. And PJ Tucker said there's not enough basketballs in the world for these guys. And Kawhi wants to do his ISO stuff and jab step stuff. And, you know, I'm watching down the stretch of that Denver game, and they run 3 Harden Kawhi pick and rolls to get Kawhi switched with Jamal Murray on them. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to see. That's like the action I want. More pick and roll variety. It's not just Harden and Zoo with PG and Kawhi standing around. I got to make use of Kawhi. So he gets his nail touch, gets touch with the nail, does his stuff with Jamal Murray. Three times. First time, miss. Second time, miss. Third time, make. So 2 points in 3 possessions. And I'm glad that they went to it, and I think they're going to need to go to it. But the more I watch Kawhi, and maybe he's just kind of easing his way into the season, the more I'm like, maybe this is actually the right balance for him as he enters his late prime, whatever he is. And they have a whole season now to figure out how to hand the keys to Harden without just making it the James Harden show all the time. And I think that they're making a lot of progress in that regard. And look, I said at the time of the trade, a lot of people laughed at the trade. I got it. I said, look, I don't think the Nuggets are like quaking in their boots about this. I don't think this makes them like a finals team or a championship team. But what I said at the time was, I think their ceiling is higher, and that they had concluded correctly PG and Kawhi being healthy is no longer enough for us to contend. We cannot do it. Our ceiling is not high enough. We forget that we even count on them being healthy, and so far they have been. We need to try something that jacks up our ceiling. Now, the biggest mystery to me in the league mode that I have not been able to solve is, what did they offer for Jrue Holiday? Because that is the fit that makes more sense on paper and in this not enough basketballs problem. I don't know the answers to that. Yeah, they didn't get Jrue Holiday. They got James Harden. And I feel today, when they went 0-5, I was like, man, I wasn't super optimistic about the trade, but I also wasn't one of the super pessimistic people. I was kind of in the middle, leaning like, yeah, I get it. Don't think it'll be like amazing, but I get it. When they went 0-5, I was like, man, I missed the mark. Like maybe this is just a complete catastrophe. Now I feel exactly as I felt that when they made the trade. I don't know where this leads in the end, but I don't hate watching them like I did the first 3 or 4 games. I think there's something interesting going on.
The other thing, like you're 100% right. The first few games was disastrous to watch. It was a tough watch, and that's probably why people haven't noticed now the run that they're on, because people are like, I'm out. I mean, right after they before this Denver game, the previous one they lost, and it was Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan lob fest that beat them. And I think that was the thing where I think a lot of people were turned off and like, they're done, they're cooked. The other thing with them that I think is important, whether Harden's in the game or not, and this is stuff I thought even before the start of the season, is they got to get into their offense quicker and get into stuff quicker and move. It's it's so different now, and you're seeing it like even in this game against Denver. Like I saw them, the ball was up crossed half court by 20 seconds on the shot clock, and I think from there they were able to kind of get into it, because then it's so different when you're able to run an action and then get into isolation. And if you could run two actions, you're really cooking. And I think with more time in the shot clock, they're able to do that. They're playing with the numbers pace wise, don't really show it, but just watching it through the eye test, like they're playing a little bit faster and with more urgency on the offensive end, instead of like, let's just walk it up. Let's be slow. Let's play against the shot clock. I think that's kind of a change in their offense these past few games that I've saw, that I also gives me a little bit more optimism for them. And I think like, okay, there might be something there.
Now, they're like, to temper all of this, whatever. They're not as good as Denver. They're not as good as Minnesota. At least not right now. They're not as good as Oklahoma City. They're not as good as a fully formed Suns team. I don't think they're as good as the Lakers right now. But they have some potential to be frisky and interesting in a way that it didn't look to be the case 2 weeks ago. And by frisky and interesting, I mean goal number one for them has got to be avoid the play-in. And if you avoid the play-in, like, yeah, we'll see where the chips fall where they may. And like, if we're healthy, we're going to be a tough out for anybody. And like, that's okay. Like, not every trade has to make you as good as Denver. Like, that's just not how the league works. It's okay to take a shot at having a shot. And I think that's what the Clippers have done. And they're now worth monitoring. Mo Dakhil, we can see you on One Mo Thing every week. We've been reading you on Bleacher Report for quite a long time. The Athletic more recently. What else can we look for? Because this is a basketball mind that you got to know, and you got to read, and you got to listen to.
I just have something recently drop on the Athletic, about prevent offenses at the end of games, and it completely drives me crazy. I have something coming on Bleacher Report. Sort of almost a primer was December 15th coming around. Just teams I'm watching one way or the other, with the potential of moves and whatnot, kind of helping people get ready for that stuff. And, just locked in. And when I find interesting things, there'll be some One Mo things.
Wait, that one on December 15th is not out yet. It's coming out, because coming out. That was like, I want to read that.
That's coming in the next day or two.
Okay. I haven't read the Prevent Offense one. I'm interested in reading that. You had a piece about offensive rebounding last week that was very, very on point. You want to learn about basketball? Read and listen to Mo. Thank you for your time, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. We're a quarter of the way through the NBA season. 25%, 20 games in for most teams, if not every team. A couple teams are maybe at 19 or 20. That means I've given myself permission to talk about big picture trends and awards. Yes, even awards. And I'm excited to do that with Fred Katz, the Athletic, friend of the podcast. You think of him as a Knicks beat writer, but he's got his eyes and his tentacles all over the NBA, well beyond the world's most famous arena, well beyond Tibbs yelling at him about his post-game question. Fred, stop asking me about minutes, Fred. What's up, Tibbs? But before we talk about all this stuff, Fred, I got to put you on the spot. I'm putting you right on the spot. Knicks get flame thrown out of the in-season tournament by the Milwaukee Bucks, who then get flame thrown out of the in-season tournament by the Tyrese Halliburton scoring machine / circus. Knicks are 12-8. What's your temperature? What's the quarter season temperature take on the New York Knicks? This is now your beat, your strong suit. Give me the 20 games in. Where are we on the Knicks? Real quick.
They're right about where I thought they would be, right? 5th in the East. The defense has been pretty good. They're top 10 in defense still, even after the Bucks hit 108% of their threes against them in that game on Tuesday. It was insanity. Like a Robin Lopez garbage time 3 cost the Bucks arguably the greatest shooting game in the history of the league from a percentage standpoint with so many makes. I think they're basically about what we thought they were. Jalen Brunson's playing like an all-star. Julius Randle is playing much better after that really rough 6-game stretch to start the season. I think Mitchell Robinson has taken a defensive leap and even a leap on the boards. He's been the best, certainly offensive rebounder in the NBA so far this season. I'm a little concerned about RJ Barrett, who got off to a great start, not just because he was hitting his shots, but because his decision-making looked like it hit another level. His pacing hit another level. He was finding cutters. He was finding shooters, and he seems to be missing guys more now after he came back from migraines. And I'm a little concerned about the fact that Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart have both made comments in the last 2 weeks saying essentially the exact same thing, that they can't get in a rhythm when they touch the ball as little as they do. And I think the Knicks front office, I wrote this morning in my story at The Athletic, like I think the Knicks front office is aware that there could be kind of a too many guys situation sort of brewing in that locker room right now. And I don't know how that's handled. Maybe it just dissipates, goes away, not a big deal. They're all team first guys, and it doesn't end up being a big deal. Or maybe we see some kind of consolidation trade down the line, leading into the deadline to help them get a big wing or something like that.
Yeah, I've been a little caught off guard, frankly, by the Grimes and Hart stuff. Just because when people talk about too many guys problems, they don't typically talk about like a very clear fifth option spot up shooter and a bench guy who's just kind of a jack of all trades, not expected to score that many points, which is what Josh Hart is. I'm going to be optimistic and just say this kind of resolves itself because of like who these guys are. I don't know. Quentin Grimes is one game making 4 threes away from maybe this feeling a lot better for him. He's just not shooting very well on the chances he gets. And Hart just does. I watch Josh Hart and I'm like, looks like Josh Hart to me. Like, I don't really know what he's supposed to be doing. He's like, his solution to not getting enough touches, if that's what he thinks is happening, is just getting a defensive rebound and not passing to anybody. I'm just going to go coast to coast against the entire defense and I'm going to score because I'm awesome at this. I think he's been good. Their bench has been really good. I'm like you. I've been a little caught off guard by this stuff. Didn't see it coming with Grimes and Hart. Makes me worry a little just because I think a certain togetherness and an understanding of what the identity of the team is a big strength of the Knicks. Everybody pulling in the same direction, everyone embracing the same kind of traits of physicality and effort and just balls to the wall kind of play. It's one of the reasons I really like this team. I think it's going to resolve itself. And look, you have too many guys right up until the time that somebody gets hurt and you don't have enough guys. Like, I would not overthink this if I were the Knicks. I like their team. And I'll tell you, Fred, before we move on to the other stuff, I like this team even more than I thought I was going to like it. I think this team is really, really good. They're 12-8. They're 5th in net rating, plus 4.2 per 100 possessions. The only teams ahead of them are Boston, OKC, Philly, and Minnesota. Look, we're all going to you're bringing up a new too many guys problem. Everyone's been talking about the Knicks trading for a star for 3 years, really, leading up to and then not getting the Donovan Mitchell trade, which has turned out more than fine for them. Mm-hmm. That's all cool. Those are interesting discussions. I like this team as it is right now. And I actually think if they're healthy and the matchups break the right way for them, they could make the conference finals. Like, I don't think that's a ridiculous goal for this team. They won't be favored against Philly. They won't be favored against Boston. They probably won't be favored against Milwaukee. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. Like, they play all those teams fairly well, and nobody wants to play these guys. They're just annoying to play. And when Randall plays like this, which is to say he makes every decision like 15% faster, they're hard to guard too. But they go from like a clogged toilet sometimes to like pretty freaking hard to guard.
Yeah, what's really caught me off guard about them? Probably the thing I'm most surprised about. They're 7th in the league in 3-point shooting percentage. I never saw that coming. I knew they were going to take a ton of threes because Tibbs, people who don't follow him as closely think of Tibbs as this old school guy with old school principles.
He's got a flip phone. Like, none of this is true.
But he is obsessed with shot selection. He talks about the value of shots. If I had a nickel for every time he said value of shots, I would get to quit my job and retire on that money forever.
The game will tell Julius what to do. The game tells you what to do.
There's that one. There are a lot of them, but he talks about the value of shots all the time. You ask him, hey, what did you like about Quentin Grimes coming into, because Tibbs really wanted to draft Grimes. What did you want? What did you like about Quentin Grimes? Why are you into him? First thing he mentions every time, the shot profile. The shot profile was great. We saw that he understood the value of shots. That's what Tibbs wants. So you knew they were going to take a lot of threes. They took a lot of threes last year, though they didn't make a super high percentage of them. Even Tibbs said at one point earlier this year, the goal is to take a high volume of threes and we'll probably end up at around league average in percentage. And that's the goal, be at least league average and get up there. And right now they're seventh. DiVincenzo is really shooting well. And I think Jalen Brunson's leap as a 3-point shooter is absolutely real. I mean, he's shooting 47% on 7 attempts a game. And it's not just the fact that he's taken more. Like, he is pulling up from deep. He's already taken and made more deep threes than he did all of last season. And in any other season of his career, deep threes like 27 feet out. And it's a thing that he started working on when he got to the Knicks a couple of years ago, and he saw they have a 4-point line on their practice court. And he started incorporating that 4-point line into his workouts a couple of years ago. And this summer, he really started to feel comfortable on that 4-point line, shooting from there, 5 spots on there, and being able to make shots without actually changing his form, without stressing. He worked on his leg strength to be able to accomplish that. And that's a different dynamic for their offense too, because now you can combat kind of the spacing issues that they had, especially in the playoffs last year against Cleveland, and then even more so against Miami. You can combat that by running even higher pick and rolls. And it's a thing that they will occasionally do now, where Brunson will run a pick and roll at 30 feet. And if you go under, he's going to hit a 3 against you. He's going to have a really good chance at hitting a 3 against you. It's a great little wrinkle for them to make them a little better.
Yeah, I'm almost disappointed that they're shooting well, because I liked the magic trick they pulled last year, which was having an historically elite offense despite being terrible at shooting from like everywhere on the floor. It shouldn't have been possible.
Hey, Zach, they reversed it because now they can't finish at the rim. They're dead last in the league in percentage at the rim. And
I think that's all left over from Julius Randle's first game against Porzingis, where he was like 0 of 500 at the rim.
Yes. I think he started the season like something like 3 for 16 at the rim. And that's part of it. But like DiVincenzo is not finishing well around the rim. Barrett's not finishing great around the rim. Julius is still, even with the way he's come up, is still in the low 60s, which is not some horrific number or anything like that. But it's not where he was last year. Last year, he was close to 70 at the rim. And Brunson actually has missed his floaters this year more than last year, which I don't think is a concern at all. He's roasted from mid-range, roasted from 3. His process is exactly the same. Those will eventually go in, but like they've missed some shots. Also, it doesn't help that every other play is Mitchell Robinson just doing tip, getting 18 offensive rebounds, and just until he finally makes one.
The Brunson stuff is interesting. It's a good transition into our next topic, but one of the things that I like what they've done is they've run Randle pick and rolls much more than at any point in his career. And I think that's worked because it makes him make decisions fast, and it puts Brunson in a spot up role where he can get more of those shots. I guess this is my long-winded way of saying, I don't even think the Knicks have hit their ceiling. Like, all these things we're talking about, both the chemistry stuff and the rim finishing stuff, like I think they're even a little better than they've shown. Okay. Awards. Let's do awards rapid fire. And we'll start with, because we're 20 games in. I don't want to hear any objections from the JJ Redicks of the world that we're not allowed to talk about MVP yet. We're allowed to talk about MVP, frankly, because it's awesome and it's fun to talk about. And Brunson, I have my Vorpsh and my Schmorps spreadsheet is up and running. It's the very long list of MVP / all NBA candidates. Jalen Brunson is on it, but it's a long list of MVP candidates. We only get 5 MVP ballot spots, and this was the one where I was like, I want your full 20 games in ballot, Fred Katz. So let's just start at the top, and this is, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that, if any of them were left off my 5-man ballot, I would feel upset about it and angry at myself. 8 is greater than 5, so that's a problem. And if you wanted to take it down to 9 or 10, I wouldn't argue with you. But let's just start at you had 9, okay? Well, give me your 9, and we'll see if we match. Just read the 9 names.
Sure. I have Jokic. I have Kevin Durant. I have Giannis. I have Embiid. I have LeBron. I have Luka. I have Shea. I have Tatum, and I have Tyrese Halliburton.
That was 9?
That was 9.
So the only one that I had 8, I said that I have all these guys on my list and on my spreadsheet. The one guy who didn't make I would feel super guilty not having him on the ballot list is Tatum. And it's just because it's crazy that he's averaging 28, 9, and 4 on 50% shooting, a career best 61% on twos. The Celtics are +9 with him on the floor. They're actually now up to +6 with him on the bench. It's crazy that these other guys are putting up such insane numbers and are so important to their team that he's 9th on my theoretical MVP ballot, and Steph Curry is 10th at best. Okay,
I know.
Number 1.
I have Steph on honorable mentions below, along with De'Aaron Fox, who hasn't played quite enough, and Anthony Edwards, who's been awesome, and Devin Booker, who hasn't played quite enough. But I don't care that much about a team's record right now. I feel like if you're good enough, I'm okay with putting you there. But if you're under 500, I was that's just at least a good enough way to eliminate it. Tatum for me is just
agreed
Tatum's
on
the
that.
Conventional old school guy, right? He's the best player on the team with the best record. But I'm with you. He's not in my top 5.
You mentioned a couple other guys that have games played issues, and team record at this point, like you said, is you can wipe it away if it's close enough to 500 in the direction. Curry's issue is the Warriors are being outscored with him on the floor. And, look, that's not his fault, but when you're splitting hairs like this, it just, it's these guys are just ironclad cases, one after the other. Okay. Top 5, number 1 for you.
It was really tough. I went with Jokic. He's just the best player in the league. He's playing like it. The efficiency numbers are actually down from where they've been the past few years. The usage is up because Murray has been out. I imagine that stuff is, he's fallen off a little bit with Murray out. I imagine the efficiency numbers, which were just obscene. He had a 66% effective field goal percentage last year. I imagine the efficiency numbers are going to come back to more Jokic-y after we saw them, but they're still the effective field goal percentage, the true shooting. It's still in the same class as KD, and it's way above Embiid and LeBron and these other guys who we talk about as potential candidates. He leads the league right now in defensive rebound rate and also assist rate. I don't know if anyone has ever done that, Zach. That's an insane combination.
I'm not sure it's true anymore, but Stats Williams, our ESPN guy, was passing this around maybe 4 days ago that Jokic was already, I may be getting this slightly wrong, but I don't think I am. He was already the player to lead the league in points, total rebounds, and total assists this far into the season. It's the latest ever anybody has done that or something. I had Jokic number 1 as well. 29, 13, and 10. Well, 9.8. We can't just give him 10 because that would be a triple double. 9.8. 55% shooting, down to 30% from 3, 61% on 2, plus 11 with him on the floor, minus 11 with him off the floor. His case has gone from totally ironclad to a little bit wobbly in the last week, but he's still the best guy. And his passing is just catalytic to the point of being impossible to quantify. Number 2 for Fred Katz.
I put Kevin Durant.
Woo!
I put Kevin Durant. The dude, because he doesn't play enough games, has fallen out of these conversations the last few years. But he's
played 19 games this year.
I know, and that's why I got him. He's shooting 52, 50, 89 right now. It is an obscene performance from him.
So you just accelerated right through the 50. To be clear, what Fred mentioned is that he's shooting 50% on threes. And if you watch the Suns, like, these are not easy threes that he's feasting on, partly because half the team is injured all the time, or Beal's injured all the time. Booker's missed a bunch of games. Like, Kevin Durant is averaging 31 points, 6.5 rebounds, 6 assists on those shooting numbers. The Suns, with their minimum salaried skeleton crew plus Nurkic plus sometimes Booker, are +6 with Durant on the floor and -4 with Durant off the floor. Like, I mean, I guess he's got to be on the MVP ballot at the expense of like one of these other guys, because those are just ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, and you know, it's a crazy one. You go through the on-offs. When he's on and Booker and Beal are off, and Beal's almost always off, obviously, but when he's on and it's just him out of the big three, the Suns are +4 per 100 possessions, like according to Clean the Glass. Like, he is carrying that team completely by himself. He's been sensational this year, I think. Also, man, his distributing has been at another level too, because when they don't have Booker and when they don't have Beal, and they've got like Jordan Goodwin out there, who I actually think has had a really nice defensive season for them and is really pesky, but he's the initiator. And as a facilitator, he has been superb, just making stuff happen for them at the top of the key all season.
So you have Durant 2. I don't think I would have Durant 2, but I didn't even do my own exercise of like actually ranking them below Jokic. But if you have Durant 2, you have him above all of the following players. This is how hard this is 20 games in. Joel Embiid, just doing the same thing he did last year when he won the MVP. 33 points. Don't just like gloss over that. 33 points, 11 rebounds, 6.6 assists, by far a career high, 51% shooting. His shooting's a little down, 32% on threes, 54% on twos. Sixers are +9 with him on the floor, +6 when he plays without Maxey. Okay, just 33, 11, and 7 for the reigning MVP. Plus his defense has been good enough that he's on my defensive player of the year, just long list. SGA, just, 36 and 6 on 55% shooting, 37% on threes, 58% on twos, +11 when he's on the floor, -1.5 without him. Okay, 36 and 6. Luka, that's right. Luka's like, oh my God, I gotta look up Luka's stuff. 32, 8.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 49% shooting, 40% on threes, 58% on twos. The best shooting season of his career. +3 with him on the floor, +2 with him off the floor. If you want to pick a little nit, maybe that'll be it. Giannis, 30. We haven't set a scoring number below 30 for any of these guys. 30, 10.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 61% shooting, +4 with him on the floor, -1 when he sits, +3 per 100 possessions without Dame. Obviously one of the 10 best defensive players in the league on top of all that. Tyrese Halliburton, 27, 12, and 4 on just comedy shooting numbers. 53, 44, 61% on twos. The best offensive engine in the NBA other than Jokic this season. Tyrese Halliburton on pick and rolls. The Pacers score 1.28 points directly out of Halliburton pick and rolls, which is when he shoots or the guy he passes to shoots. Out of 117 guys that have run 100 pick and rolls, that's second in the league. Zoom out for the entire possession, 1.31 points per possession on any trip featuring a Tyrese Halliburton pick and roll. Number 1 out of all 117 of those guys. Let me tell you this. The dudes around him in the rankings have run like just barely 100 pick and rolls, and he's up at 700 something. The Halliburton-Turner combination is the best pick and roll combination in the league so far. I don't know what to do here, Fred. Who was your number 3?
I am so glad, by the way, that this is finally the year where they have to play 65 games in order to qualify.
Well, that's someone about Booker. Booker is at risk already. He's missed 9 games. Like, you could only miss 17.
Right. Someone who we're talking about right now is going to end up missing 17, 18 games this year and is just going to be automatically removed from the conversation. I have Giannis third. He's quietly having, arguably his best scoring season ever. He's been so insanely efficient. The effective field goal percentage is up over 60%, which is obscene. And quite honestly, the way it was really tough for me between Giannis and Embiid there, because I feel like those two guys in their own ways have held teams together when things could have unraveled. Defensively, Milwaukee right now is such a problem. And they have not necessarily come out playing in the style that we thought that they would. They're not running very much Dame Giannis pick and roll, although they did do it against the Knicks on Tuesday. They were coming up with those Lopez Giannis double screens, and they were working, and Giannis was getting downhill. He was finding Marjan Beauchamp in the corner, and the Bucks hit literally 60% of their threes in the game, and it really helped. But Giannis has been on another level as a scorer, and with all the crap that's going on with Milwaukee, their transition defense is such a huge problem. They lose cutters in the half court all the time. Their transition defense is such a problem that like 3 times a game, they'll make a shot and then give up a transition bucket on the other end.
Chris Haynes at Bleacher Report reported last night that Bobby Portis had some pushback for Adrian Griffin after the game. So we're up to at least 2, we're up to at least 3 coach-related mutinies is too strong of a word, but we had Terry Stotts quit like 2 days before the season. We had the whole team being like, hey, we hate your defense. Can we play the way we like to play? And now we have this after the Pacers torched them. Just, it's not, seems like something.
And yet, after all that, they're 15-7. Giannis is shooting 65% on twos, best figure of his career. 61 from the field, best figure of his career. He's averaging 30.5 points. His passing has been the same level it's been. The rebounding has been the same level it's been. I actually think the defense has fallen off to a degree. I don't think he's been as great as a help side defender this year, which is in part because they spent all of training camp learning one defensive system and then completely changed it 6 games into the season. I'm sure that has something to do with it. But I don't think he's been quite like peak Giannis level defense. He's just been like a quarter step slow as a helper, and they're not using him in that help side corner as often as they were under Bud. But I think that gives Durant like my tiny little edge, because you're just searching for tiebreakers here. But he's sneakily just having an outrageous season again.
And fourth,
I have Embiid. Okay. I love the way that Embiid has been as a facilitator this year. I love his chemistry with Maxey. Like I was talking on my podcast yesterday about his chemistry with Maxey in the 2-man game is so different than it was with Harden, where it was just like, we're going to run pick and rolls with James Harden. And with Maxey, it's like the dribble handoffs, their dribble handoff chemistry is amazing. It honestly looks like when they get enough time together doing it, it's going to border on Jamal Murray and Jokic, because Embiid does this thing now where he tosses the ball bounces the ball between.
Yeah, does the Chris Webber pass that always used to drive my dad crazy. We had arguments over it because I thought it was cool, and then my dad was like, it's not fundamentally sound.
But you know what I'd say to your dad? You know what ends up happening? I'm watching their game against the Wizards when Embiid drops 50. And this is against the Wizards, so it kind of doesn't really count. But Tyus Jones is guarding Maxey. And Tyus Jones is an NBA player who is smart and knows what to do on defense. And they do exactly that on a dribble handoff with Embiid, where Embiid throws it between his legs, bounces it between his legs to Maxey. And what happens when you bounce it between your legs is on a dribble handoff, what happens is a lot of the time the defender who's guarding the guy running around the dribble handoff usually just like follows where the ball is. So if you're holding out the ball to hand it off, you're more likely to trail around that guy who you're guarding. And what happens is Tyus Jones just kind of follows the ball because he thinks that it's possible that Embiid is going to keep it, because he runs those quarterback keepers sometimes too. And because of that, Tyus Jones runs straight into Embiid, and Embiid just throws it between his legs to Maxey, and Maxey gets a wide open little floater that's just like his bread and butter shot. And it affects where the defenders go. I think he's been so good as a hub for others this year, like more than usual, given their roster construction. And like you said, 33 a game, and the fact that he's just like he held up that team during a time when a lot of people thought they might just collapse in on themselves with the whole
held
Harden
up
thing.
The franchise through melodrama for 5 years. I mean, it just never, this is the first time there hasn't been any in a long time. What you're saying about, we spotlit the action you're talking about on NBA Today last week. And what that really amounts to is it's taken time, but every game they have better chemistry together. They find new wrinkles. And what that play is Embiid and Maxey finding a way to leverage the fact that Tyrese Maxey is not James Harden. And one thing that Tyrese Maxey is compared to James Harden is super duper fast. So Tyrese Maxey throws Joel Embiid the ball and then sprints over to get it, and then keeps sprinting when he gets it, or stops if you go under the screen, whatever it is. That sprint from pass to Embiid to go get the ball back is just not something they would have done with Harden. It's not how Harden plays. And they discovered like, oh, this is a cool thing that works. Okay, so he's fourth. Who's fifth?
Fifth, I had to do it. I put LeBron. Maybe it's recency bias after I just watched them annihilate New Orleans, but the load that he's carrying for that offense is unbelievable. They haven't really had Gabe Vincent, who was supposed to give him a little relief in that. The load that he's carrying is insane. They are 21.2 points per 100 possessions better when LeBron plays. 21.2. That is Jokic level incredible.
15 of that is offense. 115 offensive rating, which is quite good with LeBron. That would rank like probably 6th or 7th in the league among teams. Actually, it's about 10th. And 99.8 without LeBron, which would rank so far below the Portland Trailblazers' last place offense that you couldn't even see it. I don't want to spend too much more time on MVP, but I will say LeBron, 41% on threes. That's a career high. 63% on twos. That's a career high. You might have heard that LeBron is turning 39 years old in like 3 weeks. And I just said that his twos and threes are at career high rates. It's just ridiculous. Personally, I haven't made my 5-man ballot, but I just couldn't have it without one of, if not both, SGA and Halliburton on it. I don't know who comes off. I'm glad I don't have to make this decision now. Rapid fire through the rest of the awards. Rookie of the year.
Where are we going?
Rookie of the year. Any disagreement?
Chet.
It's Chet and it's Wemby, and then I think it's Jaquez third. And it's pretty clear. And Jaquez, by the way, might actually emerge as a sneaky 6-man of the year candidate. I haven't the rare rookie and 6-man of the year candidate. Just he's shooting 58% on twos and 39% on threes. Those three just pen him in for first team all rookie. The last two spots for that are going to be a lot of fun. I think given his central importance, particularly on defense to a good team, I think Derek Lively II is probably guy number 4. And then you got like Kason Wallace, who's shooting 9 million%. Jordan Hawkins, who's averaging 13 points a game, shooting 37% on threes, and is now not even playing for the Pelicans. Asar Thompson, who I love, and I don't know, at this point, I'm like, are the Pistons going to send him to the G League? Like, I don't understand anything that's going on with their rotations. Brandon Miller's been good. Shout out to Craig Porter Jr., who hasn't played enough minutes, but has been good. Anyway, that's rookie of the year. Chet, look, the Chet Wemby thing, I heard Windy talking about this on his pod earlier this week. It's just contextually, it's impossible to compare their situations. One got plopped into, in his second year, really, in the NBA, at least in the NBA environment, a good team with good ball handlers all around him to set him up. The other, as a teenager, got plopped into a bad NBA team with no point guard anywhere in sight to set him up. And Wemby's been as advertised in every possible way. Wendy said something like, I've heard some people saying, man, maybe Wemby's not it. And Bontemps was like, nobody's saying that. And I was like screaming into the void of my office saying, nobody's saying that. Wemby's Wemby. But Chet, given his efficiency, and it's just, the Spurs are, I haven't even kept track of their record at this point, 3-17. You just don't see guys on teams that bad get any kind of awards at all. So Chet is the rookie of the year, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah,
Coach of the year.
I'm with you.
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year is really tough too. Coach of the year, I have Jamal Mosley. And I think there are a lot of other really great candidates. Mark Daignault, very much on the list. Chris Finch, very much on the list. Rick Carlisle, very much on the list. Ime Udoka, from turning the worst transition defense that I ever remember seeing in the NBA into one of the best transition defenses in the league immediately upon taking over, deserves just a shout out, if only for that. The same stuff we talked about, Embiid weathering storms. I feel like Nick Nurse has done a really good job in Philadelphia. That's another guy. The reason I went with Mosley is not even just because they've surprised. Orlando is 14-7 right now, but it's the way that they've surprised. That team is insanely good defensively, and it is really hard to get a bunch of young guys to buy in to that degree. And like, Zach, you had Cole Anthony on your pod last week, and it's amazing when you look at the way Cole Anthony's game has transformed under him, right? Like, you go through, for example, the list of most offensive fouls drawn, and Cole Anthony is drawing the second most offensive fouls in the league. He's throwing his body into screens. Like, this is not the Cole Anthony that we saw a few years ago. He's also a 6th man of the year candidate, by the way. And he has these young guys. I mean, Jalen Suggs has this, maybe this was going to happen no matter what. But Jalen Suggs has been phenomenal defensively for them. Whenever Jonathan Isaac is on the court, if he can ever play more than 13 minutes, they guard really well. They stay within their schemes really well. They just are so bought in. It's so clear. And I think from an X's and O's standpoint, the way they run their defense is pretty awesome. So I go with Mosley, but this is such a difficult award every year. It always could go to somebody else.
I also have Jamal Mosley. You summed it up quite well. The Magic they're not just a surprise. They're 14-7 with the 8th best net rating in the league, neck and neck with the Pacers, by the way. And you mentioned the defense, and normally when teams make a huge leap on defense, it's their interior guys, like some mammoth rim protector blossoms or comes into their team via trade. And the Magic don't really have that on their team. In fact, their starting center has been injured most of the year and is not a traditionally great rim protector, Wendell Carter Jr. Everyone's just playing really hard and really smart, and they are big. They have good positional size, even if they don't have that one piece that we're talking about. And Suggs has been unbelievable, and they just play incredibly hard. And I talked about this last week. It's not just defense that they do hard. It's cutting, it's rebounding, it's boxing out. It's everything is done at just full-throated screaming urgency. And that goes a long way in the regular season. You mentioned a bunch of guys. Here are some guys who got my eye on. See what the Pelicans do in the last half of the season. Obviously, they got destroyed last night. Willie Green could get up there. I don't know, how many games the Celtics have to win before people decide that Joe Mazzulla is worth at least a mention in this conversation. If the Knicks win a lot of games, your guy might get in there. You mentioned Daignault. Rick Carlisle is going to make a run at this. And this in-season tournament is stamping what he's doing in Indiana and how they've gone all in on the system that they play. And all in on shooting threes and offense, and just they have the perfect shot distribution in terms of shots at the rim and threes. Rick Carlisle's teams are really good offensive teams. They don't turn the ball over. They take good shots. It's just over and over. And I just want to say this guy's name because his team lost some guys in the offseason. Didn't get a guy that everyone thought they were going to get in the offseason. Hasn't gotten like an absolute blowaway first 20 games from its best player. Hasn't been fully healthy for very much of the season. He's universally considered one of the 3 best coaches, if not the best coach in the NBA. And he's never won this award. And at some point, I'm voting for Eric Spoelstra just so Eric Spoelstra can win the goddamn thing, because he needs to win one at some point in his career. The Heat are 12-9 after starting 1-4, and they just grind your ass to dust every single game. Shout out Spo. You want to say some names? Say some NBA names? Most improved player. Let's say some names real fast. Say some names, Fred Katz, of guys who have put in the work and are showing improvement in basketball and life.
Some names. Tyrese Haliburton was awesome last year, but this is a whole other level. It's a whole other level. The shooting splits are insanity. You went over them. 5.4 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. And it's not just that he doesn't turn the ball over. Like, it's one thing for a player like Chris Paul to not turn the ball over when he's slow, when he's prodding and he's working methodically in the half court. Haliburton is on go all the time. He is running, he is working fast, and he's still not making mistakes. Normally, when you work in like a high octane offense, like say the Warriors, where there's just tons of passing, baked into that strategy is, okay, you're going to have to deal with some turnovers. And teams like that always do it. The Pacers lead the league in assists, and I think they're second in turnover rate. That is such a rare combination. That's Haliburton. It's the shooting
splits. Say more names. Okay. Cam Thomas, because why the hell not? Keep saying names. He's on my list. When you say a guy who's not on my long list, I will stop you.
Okay. Alperen Şengün, Scotty Barnes, Tyrese Maxey, Duncan Robinson, Jalen Suggs. Those are the 7 that I have.
I haven't stopped you yet.
Those are the 7 that I have. I have that in my notes. Who else you got?
So Scotty Barnes it won't surprise people, but he's just way up across the board. Duncan Robinson will surprise some people. He's averaging a career high 15 a game, and it's the manner in which he's doing it. I wrote about it last week, taking way more twos than ever in his career for a team that needs a little offensive punch out of more guys, and they're getting it from him. He's on the list. I'll just say more names. Jalen Johnson. Did you say Jalen Johnson?
Oh, no, that's a good one. Jalen Johnson. I should have had him.
Sam Hauser, Lonnie Walker IV, Max Strus, kind of like a supernova version of what I just said about Duncan Robinson in terms of his assists and his pick and roll play. And then it's too early for some of these guys. Şengün, you said. Banchero's shooting is worth monitoring because that was a weak spot for him last year. He's up to 50% overall, 42% on threes, 51% on twos. I'm just monitoring it. It's under monitoring. And then there's
I just expected him to have
no one will vote for him as a second year guy. Obi Toppin is more, I think, of an opportunity case than an improvement case, although he's shooting almost 80% on twos. I mean, like that's a real number. Shaden Sharp doesn't really do it for me. I just wrote his name down. I'm watching Moses Moody. I'm watching. I'm just like, I got my eye on Moses Moody. I don't know. Should I say Corey Kispert's name just to say his name? Corey Kispert. Hi, Corey. Amazing hair. Hair has not improved. The hair and the headband combination has been Roger Federer-esque since he entered the league.
I've been out on the headband for him for a long time, but the hair is pristine. He's finally actually shooting more. He was so hesitant to shoot for so long, and he's finally shooting more. He's such a good cutter. He gets himself open so much. He's been good for them. Denny Avdia has also been a lot better this year for them, but I don't think he's showing up on a ballot.
I don't even know who I would vote for now, to be honest. I was probably like Jalen Johnson was going to be right there, and he's been injured. So I guess I'll just TBD it between Haliburton and Maxey, kind of unconventional candidates who have already finished in like the top 6 or 7 for this award and keep getting better and better. I'd probably vote for one of them. Maxey was my preseason prediction. Okay, last one, defensive player of the year. I guess I will, before you reveal who your pick is there a new candidate? Are there any new name? Like, I went through the list real quickly of like guys I would like put on the long list for this award. Like, I kind of want some fresh blood for this thing. Is there any fresh blood for you?
So I have 10 players on a list. Does Herb Jones count as fresh blood?
Herb Jones, honestly, no. But maybe for defense player of the year, I think, yeah, he didn't make an all defense team last year. And people in New Orleans reacted as if a scandal had occurred, which is like, it's hard. There are only 10 guys. You only get to pick 10. Wings just are disadvantaged in the voting. I think I think it's skewed too far toward big men just by default. If you're going to give it to a wing, like a traditional wing this year, he'll end up being the guy. I mean, and he's not even a wing. He's everything. He's whatever you need him to be in order to accommodate the fact that Zion can only make one hard cut per defensive possession, and then he might as well lay down on the floor. And JV is just sort of, a one-dimensional defender. And like, Herb can guard anything, anywhere. I love it. Fresh blood.
He's the most versatile defender in the league right now. Like, he'll guard centers, he'll guard guards, he'll guard wings. He's amazing there. How about this one?
People think that's an exaggeration, and it's not. Like, just watch 2 or 3 Pelicans games in a row. It's like game 1, Herb Jones is on John Collins because that's the matchup that they want. They want to hide Zion somewhere else, or Zion's not playing, whatever. Game 2, Herb Jones is on LeBron James. Game 3, Herb Jones is on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's just like, it's ridiculous, and he guards them all well.
Yeah, and I want to point out too, like, people talk about fill in the blank player can guard all 5 positions, but really when they say that, it's usually can switch onto all 5 positions, which is great. That's awesome. If you can, Bam Adebayo can switch onto all 5. It's
usually you can switch on like 3.5 positions.
Yes, and then there's some guys who can switch. Bam Adebayo, you'll switch on to 5. You're feeling good, but you're not usually starting Bam on a small point guard. Herb Jones is just, he's unique right now. I think I do have somebody number 10 on my list right now who would definitely be fresh blood. And at the risk of sounding like a homer, I do have Mitchell Robinson on my long list. I'm monitoring it.
The only reason he's not on mine is I looked up what teams are shooting at the rim against him, and it's like 65%, which is pretty high. But yes, his rebounding and I've talked about his mobility being at another level this year. Like, you put him on a stretch 5 and he can get out there and hedge over and recover in time.
And the other part of it, Zach, I'm aware of the numbers at the rim, and they're not great. However, if you stretch that out a little bit more, just beyond the rim, what's happening so often, and I see it every game, is that what Mitch does is he steps up and just goes arms up, and he's coaxing all of these people into floaters. And right now, the Knicks are giving up an insanely low percentage on floaters. And I think the huge reason for it is Mitchell Robinson. Like, I've had conversations with him about it where he doesn't care about blocking shots anymore. When he first came in the league, he was your typical super athletic, really raw big man who was just going to jump after shots, and he would leave rebounding lanes vulnerable on the other side, and he would foul too much. His fouls are way down. The Knicks right now defensively are forcing tons of turnovers, and they're not fouling. And again, that's a combination that you don't really see hand in hand. And if you ask me, why are the Knicks forcing a lot of turnovers this year when they never did it before? I would give me the number one reason, the number one person responsible for that. I would say Mitchell Robinson, who's actually averaging more steals, I think, than any other big man in the league right now. So often, so many of their turnovers come after the ball hits the paint and they just get engulfed. And it starts with Mitch with just these insanely long arms. And then in terms of not fouling, like, he hasn't had 5 fouls in a game yet this year. He is on the floor and he's out there. I'm not saying he should be defensive player of the year. I do think he should be in consideration now that all defense is positionless. I would definitely have him in consideration there, but you want fresh blood. I don't think we've ever discussed Mitch in that
It'll be interesting to
conversation.
see if there's like 4 centers on first team all defense this year. I had forgotten that they're doing that position list too. It's not just all NBA. I forgot about this.
Correct.
So just what I say, the usual suspects, and I'll get to the guy who's ahead right now. You know, it's Bam, Anthony Davis, sensational. Brook Lopez, sensational. Giannis, Embiid, I've already mentioned. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s numbers have taken a hit. His blocks are way down. His rebounds are way down. He's probably not quite there. Evan Mobley's been very good across the board. Draymond will be in the conversation if he doesn't get suspended and ejected from 50% of games. Claxton hasn't played enough. Shout out to Ivica Zubac, who's been quite good for the Clippers, who are running up the rankings defensively. He's just not quite as good as these guys. Wemby, we talked about, just can't, they're way better defensively with him on the floor, but their team is just horrible. For fresh blood, I'm a little bit hesitant to say this, but should we be looking at Chet Holmgren a little bit?
He's good.
They're allowing 106 points per 100 possessions with him on the floor. Pretty stingy at the rim. Just the rebounding is, I think, the weak spot. But if you look at even their shot diet, they allow fewer shots at the rim and fewer threes with him in the game. And that's the sign of a centerpiece who's doing a really good job of A, I've got the rim. B, I've got it to a degree that I don't need all you people to come help me stay home on shooters, so we deflate those. But I think, and as much as I am a Bam super fan, I think it's just got to be Gobert. They're the number one defense in the league. And I saw Chris Finch say this after one of their recent wins. He said, this is the best I've ever seen him play. And he clarified, I obviously didn't watch every Utah Jazz game when he was winning 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards and making all-star teams, but this is how I feel. And I read that and I almost fell off my chair because I was watching the same game. And as I am wont to do, I said to nobody in my office out loud, just talking to myself like an insane person, I think Rudy Gobert is playing the best he's ever played in his life, offensively, defensively, all around. And then I had the same internal monologue that Chris Finch. It was like, well, he's like won 3 Defensive Player of the Years. Like, I honestly think this is the best he's ever played, which is insane considering last year was like the worst he's ever played since he was barely playing as a rookie or whatever. I just think it's all it's early and it'll be open at the end, but right now I think it's got to be him.
Yeah, he's my pick too. And quite honestly, this was probably the easiest one for me. I was watching their game against the Spurs the other night, and Trey Jones is coming around to pick and roll. How about that? We're giving Trey Jones and Tyus Jones shout outs in the same podcast. Trey Jones is coming around to pick and roll, and he gets by his man. By the way, the Gobert, Jaden McDaniels pick and roll combination, that's the toughest defensive pick and roll combination to go against in the league. But Trey Jones is coming around to pick and roll. And as he's coming downhill, Gobert is he's in drop and he's in the paint waiting for Jones. And he gives Jones just like a little with his right hand, just like a come here in the middle of the play. And I was like, that dude is rolling. And you know what Trey Jones does? He doesn't go anywhere near him. He goes to the right nail and he shoots a fadeaway off balance, kind of rushed mid-range shot, and he misses it. And you want to talk about shot breakdowns? The Wolves are giving up more mid-range shots than any other team in the league. And it's because even when Rudy Gobert is inviting people to come right at him, they still don't want to do it. And teams are shooting a really low percentage on those mid-range shots too. It's just everything that you want opponents taking, that's what's happening. They're not getting to the rim against the Wolves. They're giving it very few shots against the rim or at the rim. And so much of that is just Gobert. Guys are shooting 48% on layups and dunks when Gobert's the closest defender. Like he's been certainly as good as ever right now.
Rudy Gobert, as Perk likes to say, or just says. I don't know if he likes to say, that's just how it comes out of his mouth. The other 2 ballot spots would be quite interesting if we actually filled it out right now. And I do think Chet Holmgren deserves some attention it's in that discussion, but it's Gobert. We didn't do 6 man of the year. You know why we didn't do 6 man of the year? Because it's too early for this one, because like we just have to see who's eligible. Like right now, Reggie Jackson is having a great year. He's not eligible. He started too many games. Trey Murphy III will get himself eligible eventually. We all know who the candidates are. There's lots of guys you mentioned, Cole Anthony, Bogdanovich, Jaquez, on and on and on with these guys. Norm Powell, Tim Hardaway Jr. I'm sure I'm forgetting more people. I don't really.
It's also the award where like there are so many guys who are just off to really hot shooting starts that we have to see if they sustain. Like if Lonnie Walker ends the year shooting 46% from 3 and Brooklyn ends up winning 55% of its game, Lonnie Walker is going to be in the conversation. If Tim Hardaway has been shooting the hell out of the ball, like he's going to be in the conversation. I think Mo Wagner is a guy who's played great off the bench. Horford's been great off the bench. Everyone forgets about Bogdanovich every year in 6 man. All he does is just put up awesome scoring numbers on awesome efficiency, and everyone forgets about him. And I wish it wouldn't be so lame. I think it's so lame to put a 6th man for a terrible team on your ballot. But man, do I want to find a way to put Caruso in there? Because he has really been so good for them off the bench. It's certainly not his fault. And then there's the guy who was the runner-up last year, and Emmanuel Quickly, who's having a similar. I don't think he's having quite as good of a season as he did last year, but certainly a very similar one, and has to be in the conversation.
So Bogey has been on my ballot at least once, if not twice. Caruso is starting now and is on the verge of not being eligible by the criteria. We'll see. Monk, it will be there in the end. Malik Monk's been unbelievable as playmaking. And another guy who will be there because you can't fight the Lakers is Austin Reeves, who's starting to play like Austin Reeves from last year again. And if he stays in this bench role, he may well end up winning it, but we'll see. Fred Katz, read his coverage of the Knicks and the league in general at The Athletic. You have a new podcast. Promote it now.
I do. It's called Katz and Shoot. It's over on Patreon. You can subscribe. Patreon.com/Katz and Shoot. It's my last name, Katz and Shoot.
See, it's a pun. It's a pun. Katz and Shoot. It's a basketball pun.
It's
much like pun. The low post. It's a basketball pun.
It's a good pun. The low post kind of beats out all other puns because it's, you don't change anything with the name. It's just the low post and the low post, and you just have to change the spelling. But yeah, subscribe to Katz and Shoot, and you can find all my writing on The Athletic.
Fred Katz, good to see you, buddy.